Hi everyone, I'm Kelly O'Horo, and this is Adaptable, Behavior Explained. Hi everybody, thanks for tuning in to Adaptable. I'm happy to have you here, and we're going to talk about health anxiety. And I have with me Taylor O'Horo, who has been so brave to be part of the show today, and she's going to share with us a little bit about her personal experience about health anxiety and what it's been like for her. So Taylor, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. So to kick us off, we're going to talk just a little bit from a counselor's perspective. What is health anxiety? So it's seen as a condition where a person experiences excessive worry about having or acquiring a serious illness. The anxiety can typically be accompanied by a specific set of problematic thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. They might include dysfunctional beliefs. So this is holding beliefs that all bodily sensations are due to underlying diseases and that diseases are common and are dangerous. And it's like thinking every time that your car makes a noise, it's about to break down. There can be catastrophic thinking where we imagine the worst case scenario related to our health, like having severe illness and then being unable to cope with a disease. So imagine always assuming that a rain cloud means a flood is coming and it's going to wipe out your house. It can accompany safety behaviors, which engages in things like whatever they have to do to alleviate anxiety, like excessive Googling of symptoms, WebMDing things to seek reassurance, and avoiding medical appointments or obsessively going to medical appointments to get reassurance. It can be body vigilance, so being hyper aware of bodily sensations that leads to misinterpretation of benign systems and thinking that they're catastrophic. Like it's akin to hearing a strange noise in your house and immediately thinking that it's an intruder. So Taylor, thank you so much for joining us. We're going to dig in a little bit to those topics, and we're going to figure out what it's like for a layperson who's not yet a therapist, although likely soon to be a therapist with your school trajectory, but what it's been like for you. And maybe you can tell us a little bit, first an introduction of you, and then I'll kick us off with your first question.
So I'm Taylor. I just finished my bachelor's in psychology.
Congratulations. It was such an awesome feat.
So awesome. And so now I'm looking to apply for my master's to go get my mental health counseling degree, probably through UOP, most likely. So I'm hoping to start that in the fall. And so, yeah, that's just a little bit about me.
Yeah. And you're an advocate of mental health work.
For sure.
You've been working here as our marketing specialist, administrative coordinator at Infinite for a long time. So you get firsthand knowledge around mental health, everything, and all of your friends are therapists. So it's
my friends, my in-laws, like both you and Pat. So
there's really no getting around the therapist skew of things.
No.
So thank you so much for sharing that with us. And you have been so amazingly brave in your own personal journey about attending therapy yourself. For how many years has it been?
Close to 10, I think.
Okay.
I think if I were to be honest, though, and say consistently, probably like 4. And
understanding health anxiety as you do, what can you tell us a little bit about your personal background and maybe some ideas you have that have contributed to health anxiety in general?
Yeah, so when I was little, my mom got diagnosed with a super rare form of cancer, and it usually happens in adults that are like 60 and up, so it's not typical in a 47-year-old or 40-year-old, I guess I should say. And so most of my childhood was spent in hospitals, cancer centers, which are just so tragic and so sad. Many doctor's appointments, just I will never forget the white walls. I'm like, white walls, just to me, I'm like everywhere, right? That's how hospitals are. It's just very blank. And so, yeah, a lot of time.
Right.
A lot of time.
And watching her suffer through that illness.
Yeah. I always say, I kind of wish it was something that took her out faster.
Right.
Because I think the worst part is watching someone suffer over a long period of time.
Right.
Like that's way more tragic than, maybe a heart attack where they went,
Yeah. And although it's shocking and tragic, watching someone slowly decline is so painful and helpless.
Super.
Yeah. And how old were you when she eventually passed?
I was 9, so I was like 2 months away from being 10.
Okay.
So almost 10.
All right. And so for you, when you think about the topic of health anxiety, from a logical perspective, I imagine it makes perfect sense to you that this is how
Yes.
your anxiety shows up. But what's health anxiety for you? What's it look like for you?
It encompasses a lot of things. I would say health anxiety for me is a little bit thinking that everything is something. So I have a freckle, but it's not a freckle. It's skin cancer. And now I'm at the dermatologist. And obviously I don't do that as much anymore. I've way, I guess, alleviated that. But that's definitely what it was for me. For a while, everything was something.
And that's so painful and overwhelming because, I can remember when you were in that phase and I didn't really know what was going on. And I mean, I could connect the dots that, we learn what we live, and you watched your mom suffer your whole childhood and then ended up losing her. And so I imagine that eventuality is like, this is how we go. This is what happens. And so watching you go through that was really hard because, one, it costs you a lot of time and money to go to a doctor every week, and you're so young
much.
and there's like very low likelihood that something's
And like
actually
so
wrong.
healthy for the most
Right.
part.
And you take better care of yourself than most people I've ever met. So
Because I'm so anxious.
about it, right?
There's reasons. Yeah.
Right, sure. What were some of the triggers that intensified your health anxiety, especially after such that significant loss at such a young age?
Sleep. Because a lot of the stuff that happened with my mom typically happened at night. For some reason or another, it just always hit at the midnight. So a lot of it was like sleep. If I go to sleep, something bad's going to happen. So I'm not a very good sleeper still to this day. So much of it was also having kids. That became a trigger just because now I have attachment to somebody that I don't want to lose. And so everything that was wrong with them, like I was at the doctor with them. There was a lot of food. Food was a trigger. Like I have to eat these certain foods because they can't be cancer inducing or, contribute to illness or sickness in one way or the other. So that definitely was probably the most of my triggers for the start of it.
And that increase really, I think that the other angle that I remember seeing was when you had kids, it wasn't just what's wrong with them, but what happens if something's wrong with me.
Yes.
And there was a lot of that worrying about others that showed up. I remember that, even if I have the slightest thing, you go straight to, oh my God, you need to go get that checked out because like there's no chance I'm losing you.
Yeah, right.
And I can remember
I'm like, yeah, it's time to
girl,
get
it's
that
just
looked
the
at.
annual skin check. I'm going to be okay.
I know. I'm always like, put your sunscreen on.
Yeah. I know you're really conscientious about those things. It's so important to recognize those triggers. Over the years, what are some of the things that you've done to address or alleviate some of those triggers?
So EMDR, obviously, a lot of EMDR. I've done some intensives. CAP, that was an amazing experience.
For those of you who don't know, that's ketamine-assisted psychotherapy.
Yeah.
So there's an autonomic nervous system reset. If you're interested in that topic, I have 2 shows about that in the channel because it's a fascinating phenomenon and so effective. I mean, I've seen a huge difference in you since that.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
No, I think that definitely switched a lot of things. Also, just accepting that sometimes you have to be on medication.
Sure.
But I also work with a naturopath, so I take whatever supplements and do my annual blood checks to make sure everything's okay. I do all my physical exams. Like I'm pretty
Proactive.
Yes.
Proactive with
pretty
your health.
proactive.
Do you feel like you go to the doctor still unreasonably, or where do you think you
No,
are
in fact,
there?
I was like, I think I'm 3 years out on a dermatologist check. Like I should go do that. So no, I don't think I'm quite as nervous as I used to be.
So I appreciate your candor about seeking professional help and your vulnerability about that. Can you talk a little bit more about the therapeutic experience specifically for you as it relates to health anxiety, so some of our viewers can understand what they might even talk about with a therapist and how the therapist helps to unwind some of that?
So when I go into my therapist, and I know there's something bothering me, right? Like I might have an ailment. It might be my neck hurts or I have a cyst or I have something. We typically go in and we start by figuring out what the target is. And then we go through all the scales, and I never remember the numbers ever. I'm like, can you repeat which one's high and low? And then we do EMDR on it. And a lot of it is like, sometimes I have to mix some somatic work in there.
Okay.
So she'll have me like squeeze a pillow while I'm holding the buzzies, while she's doing the thing with the little
with the
wand. Yeah.
Can you give us an example of something that you had as a somatic presentation and then you addressed it, and maybe even how it connected or what it was connected to? Do you feel comfortable sharing something like that?
Yeah. I had for a long time TMJ super bad. So, and I had it one-sided, and it just always was on the left side. And I went in and I addressed it. And what we ended up finding out was it was like another part. So it was like kind of I had two parts. I had my right side and my left side. Oh. And this side was like trying to keep me kind of more obsessed with the, rumination and the negative thought cycle interaction. And this part was like, no, we're safe to like move on from that now.
Oh, so you had a part that was really aversive to letting go.
Yep.
So in how that shows up in the body is it's really tight.
Yep.
Bracing.
Yeah. It's bracing, but this side never had any pain, and everything bad happened on that side.
Interesting.
And so once we addressed that, and that was very many sessions, I don't really have it as bad anymore.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think so few people understand how much the body is informing us about emotional information that's unresolved, and just part of our story of protection and defense. And it's really wonderful when a client is open to us getting curious about what it might be holding and how we can work together to help you let it go.
Well, and I became obsessed with that Louise Hay, Heal Your Body book. So now, because I think that it also somehow helped me to not feel like everything was something when I could connect an emotion to a physical ailment. So when I could go, I have a stomach ache, what does that mean? And I go to the Louise Hay handbook, and it's like, avoidance or whatever it is. And I'm like, okay, it helps me know like where the unhealed part is that needs some work.
Right. But you hit the believe button that there's a connection to it. You're at the point so far along in your therapy, not that it's an ailment that actually is pointing you to some issue, disease, or otherwise, but that there's just data. And I like to tell my clients that whatever's happening in my body is just data. It's not bad. It's not good. It's just connected to something. And it's, our emotions are chemical. It's not separate. So it's not as if our body is doing something separate and apart from what our brain tells it to do. It's the computer. So, it's all connected. And so I think it's really inspiring that you're so quickly like, I wonder what it means. I have a headache. I wonder what was going on that I was not paying attention to, or where I got upset or triggered. And
that made more sense too after I took that health psychology class.
Okay.
And it was just basically going through the psychology of how stress and depression and all these different mental health problems actually really affect our body. Oh, yeah. And that was so fascinating, because I was like, okay, now if I have to have my one bill be therapy, I'll do it, because I'm bought in. Like, I see it now.
Right. Well, and it's like the body does keep the score. So if I don't heal these things, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like you're going to make yourself sick with all of the worry about potentially becoming sick and the impending doom that likely will not happen, given how great you take care of yourself. So that's so true.
And it had to be so different, because I grew up in a family household where like we did not talk about our feelings. Mm-hmm. So I kind of learned to compartmentalize like up here, but my body was like the messenger. And when things would go wrong, like I just remember right when my mom died, all of a sudden I had eczema, allergies, asthma, and I was like, oh, my body just fractured.
Could not handle the stress of it.
Yeah. Just in that whole year. And I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. And all those things are oftentimes at bay with you, but then when something stressful arises in your life, you get a flare-up of something.
Exactly.
Right. And so it's the body, if you think about a lot of those things being autoimmune related, and you think about stress as, something that our body goes, threat, danger.
Right.
And so when you think of the system being so overwhelmed and taxed, like when your mom passed away and the aftermath of that, your dad was never the same, and your school life was never the same. Nothing was ever the same again after your mom passed. And so that inundation and overwhelm of just constant stress is just wreaks havoc on the body.
When having a hypochondry well, is it health anxiety? So having a parent with health anxiety and having it almost seems kind of like a disease because it really does run through the family. And so what I didn't know as a kid, but what I understand now is that my dad's whole side of the family is just, and including him, right? They're just very health anxious. And so I try to be really careful now because I do not want to pass that to my kids.
And unfortunately, you know, so much of some of the early times in their lives, like you were still really fraught with so much of that. And so, and even though you were aware and you were working so hard, you know, they watched mom be worried about whatever and, you know, and so there's going to be some propensity, but likely with the next generation, it'll get better and better. And that's the goal, right? Is that we can be better, but we learn. Yeah. We learn what we live. And so I think that it's beautiful and strong and brave of you to continue to do the work so that it doesn't show up quite so noisily and that your offspring, you know, they're like, mom used to be this kind of way, but she's not anymore.
She's good now.
Yeah. And then they can see that change. So what resources or support would you recommend for our viewers who are maybe in the early stages of wanting to address, you know, things related to having health anxiety?
I would say get an EMDR therapist. That would be my first.
Stop Googling. Stop WebMDing.
I do not Google anything now. I'll tell my husband, will you Google this for me? Because he can appropriately look at Google, right?
Offer some discernment.
Right. Not me. It's, you know, you have a headache, so you have a brain tumor. And I'm like, that's it. I knew it. You know?
It's over.
It's over. Like planning my own funeral. So that for sure. There's a girl I really like on Instagram. I think it's health_anxiety. And she also has a podcast called The Health Anxiety Chicks. I think it's Health Anxiety Chicks. But she talks a lot about it, and she kind of normalizes how we all have this collective thing, and a lot of the fears are the same, and it kind of makes it feel so much like, okay, if all these people have this, the chances that I'm 1 in a million is probably very low, you know?
So it normalizes that there's a groupthink piece.
And she does like great posts where she's like, unclench your jaw, you do not have a brain tumor. Like she does like, you know, she's very positive too. So I like that.
That's great. So there's a resource. What things do you do personally that help ensure the best stability that you can related to, you know, health, diet, exercise, you know, whatever you do to try to manage and maintain just the most basic, aside from therapy and all the things you mentioned there?
Yeah. So, well, I've taken up cold plunging at your house. So I've been doing that at least 11 minutes a week. It was awful today though.
Yeah. It felt so cold. For some
it
reason.
really did. I couldn't feel my toes. I was like, this hurts. So I've taken that up. I've definitely tried to decrease the amount that I socially drink, right? I've definitely tried to decrease the amount of caffeine I've had.
People don't understand how much of a stimulant caffeine really ups the anxious.
Yeah.
You know, it does.
Yeah. My naturopath was like, try just green tea. It's cleaner, a little bit better for your mental health.
Yeah.
Overall healthier probably.
Yeah. That's awesome. And, you know, I would like to also say exercising is really important. So if, even if it's just a long walk, it's really beneficial to keeping that body moving and calming things down and
getting out in the sun.
Yeah. The sun, keeping that vitamin D up, super important. So just to wrap up here, what would be something that you want to make sure our viewers know about this journey related to health anxiety before we part ways today?
I would say there's hope. It can change. It does get better. Yeah. And it does take work, and you have to be very patient because it doesn't happen overnight. So,
and you have to be patient with yourself, and you have to be patient with others who might run lower patience and tolerance with you because it's been a long standing thing, and they understand maybe more about what it is than you do because it's happening to you and in you. Exactly. And so understanding that it impacts the people around you and having grace for them while they are patient while you work through things, I think is another.
And being compassionate with yourself too.
Right. Absolutely.
Having a lot of compassion for how hard it is.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you being here so much. It's such a hard topic to talk about. You've been incredibly vulnerable and honest and open with us, and I can't thank you enough for that. So thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in today. If you would like more information about health anxiety, please check out that Instagram that Taylor talked about. And there are also other resources. And of course, seek therapy. It's very helpful in recognizing that most things have an underlying cause and we learn what we live. And so this is just one manifestation of how anxiety can look. And I hope that until we meet again, that you lead with love. It'll never steer you wrong.